My family has around 360 acres in northern Oklahoma that has been in our family since the land rush. Growing up, the family would meet there for Thanksgiving and Christmas. But as the family expanded, it was quickly outgrown. Nowadays, I'm about the only person that goes there, and I went there regularly to train with my firearms. I went there earlier this year and had an experience that shook me so badly that I haven't spoken about it until recently and will never go back there alone. I arrived around 2 p.m. and set up my targets, but something felt off. I use an electronic headset for hearing protection that also amplifies ambient noise, and I noticed that everything seemed to stop. No wind, no bugs, no birds, nothing. Just complete and total silence, which is very unusual for the area. I run my normal drills, and as the sun starts to set, things get stranger. Odd smells, like a dirty litter box plus body odor, started coming around, and I noticed that the coyotes were crossing the field west of me, almost as if they were intentionally avoiding entering the woods nearby. Then I started hearing interference coming over my headset and what sounded like disembodied voices speaking in an indiscernible language. Now I'm starting to worry. I start gathering my things and I hear what sounds like a woman's blood-curdling screams coming from the woods. Around the same time, I got what I can only describe as a nauseating, omnidirectional feeling of being watched, shortly followed by very distinct footsteps trudging through the foliage in the tree line approximately 30 days from my position. I've been an avid hunter since childhood and familiar with noises of the woods, and the cadence of the footsteps were indicative of a large bipedal creature, oddly human-like. I pull my phone out to take video and I start scanning the tree line with my flashlight. Standing behind a tree at the edge of the tree line was a tall black silhouette with spindly limbs and a pale face, looking directly at me. I managed to capture a great still image of it from the video that I will try to find and attach. I quickly grabbed my range bag and made a run towards my truck. I get about 50 Ys from the truck, and the light post on our property that is hooked up to county power and has never turned off in the 20 years I've been going here suddenly cuts off. Now I'm blindly running in the direction I believe my truck is in, while I hit the unlock button on my fob to find the lights. I get in my truck, speed off, and as I'm watching in the rear view, the light post turns back on. I apologize for the long post, but I'm finally ready to get this out in the open for interpretation. I tend to think of myself as a rational person that doesn't necessarily believe in the woo kind of stuff. Although my mother described me as being sensitive and somewhat gravitated towards energies as a child, I was doing everything I could to rationalize or come up with a reasonable explanation for the things I was experiencing. But I have no explanation. The kind of fear this experience put into me was unlike any kind of fear I'd ever felt.
There was this one time, several years ago, my identical twin and I were about 11 or 12, and we had one of our first real creepy experiences together. I didn't think much of it until today when we both talked about it because it was just so creepy to us. We're almost 21 years old today, so my twin and I were born and raised in a house built in the mid-1800s, and we actually still live there now. It used to be a mini hospital, and our garage actually used to be an old schoolhouse in the early 1900s. It even still has the furnace in the classroom and teacher's office and living area. Usually you would think a house built that long ago and with its history, it would be haunted. But honestly, we never really got that vibe from it. It felt constantly creepy. But nothing obviously paranormal happened until then. I think as kids we wanted to think the house was haunted because it just felt like it should be. It has an upstairs, an extremely creepy unfinished basement with a root cellar, tons of little cubbies and little doors leading to Coraline-like crawl spaces. But despite that, it actually wasn't too bad. We just loved to creep ourselves out. Anyways, we were in the dining room, and if you can imagine it, right off of the dining room was the kitchen, and from the dining room into the kitchen you can see the laundry room door in the kitchen. And the laundry room door also led to the basement. The door from the dining room into the kitchen was open, but the laundry room door was closed, and we could see that from where we were sitting at the dining room table. And at that moment, we were drawing and doing homework, and our parents weren't home. I remember Human by Christina Perri was playing. I still can't listen to it to this day, from the living room TV. We hadn't known until we talked about it just recently, but we had both been just kind of looking at the door a lot. We felt like we couldn't keep our eyes off of it for too long. And this was strange, because we've never really been scared of that door during the day, and this was during the day. And especially when it was closed, because then it wasn't creepy. We were only scared of it at night. But we had both been eyeballing the door but hadn't said anything to each other or noticed the other one doing the same. And I remember thinking, wouldn't it be creepy if I looked up and the door was open? And I looked up, and the door was open. That particular door makes a lot of noise when it opens too, and we heard absolutely nothing. But it was wide open. My twin had also apparently looked up from his drawing and saw it too. We both didn't even say anything or look at each other, didn't skip a single beat and ran outside. I remember feeling this horrible, terrifying feeling for the first time, like a tingling in my scalp and heart, all throughout my arms. It felt even scarier that it wasn't just me, my twin saw it too. I was scared shitless, and we didn't stop running until we were a little ways down the road away from the house. We even left the front door open. And what happened may seem kind of silly to someone else, but my twin and I have always had this really strange connection. We don't have to even speak to each other, and we just know what the other one is thinking and feeling. And that moment really felt significant, because who gets scared of an open door? I almost feel like it was some kind of sixth sense, or it might just be that we both felt the same thing, whatever it was. And it seemed like every significantly creepy experience we had in that house was when we were both together. I might add, no one opened the door, no one came home, and there was no wind. It wasn't really possible in a house with no steady moving air. I don't know. I felt like this story was worth telling, and maybe someone has a similar story or something to say about it.
This happened when I was about 15 in a little town called St. Helens, just outside of Portland, Oregon. At the time, our family was really going through some tough obstacles. My dad had been acting very strange talking to himself, and not acting as he normally did for a couple of days. His personality would change quite often. At the time, he was not diagnosed with schizophrenia. We were trying to get him help. Leading up to the night I had seen this thing conversing with my dad, I had also experienced very strange dreams, and it felt like I had been sat on by someone very heavy. I looked, and no one was there. My brother had seen something he called the garbage man on numerous occasions. He said it looked like a bag was over his head and was being sucked into his mouth and eye sockets. It leaned over him and appeared to be very tall. This thing visited him a few times. It was about 2 a.m. and I heard my dad talking to someone or himself. At this point, I had a routine of going and talking with him to calm him. My bedroom had been right next to the kitchen and the bathroom because it was a small house. I walk into the kitchen, which had been lightly lit by the outside lights. First thing I see is the very tall shadow figure in the doorway of the bathroom, and my dad standing toe-to-toe with this massive thing. He's mumbling something, then he says loudly, "Leave me alone!" I'm terrified, so I ran right back into my bedroom. My dad's mental state took a turn. It was a struggle for my family to get him help. Eventually, things escalated, and my dad was considered a danger to himself and others, and was able to get the help he deserved. They did not find drugs in his system, and eventually diagnosed him with schizophrenia. I don't know why we saw this thing or what it was. I think it was preying on my dad's weakness. Can people with this mental illness see past the curtains? Since this day, that question runs through my head a lot.